Alright, in this lecture we will learn array traversal. So what is traversing a given array? So traversing means visiting all cells of this array over here. There are many different purposes for doing this. It can be printing out all elements of this array over here, or we want to update all elements of array one by one. So we can use this traversal for different purposes. Even in some searching algorithms, they are using traversing until they find the element. So we will explain this in our upcoming lectures. So here, we just need to concentrate on traversing. So how do we traverse an array? It's very easy. We just need to create a loop, and starting from the first cell, we are sequentially visiting all cells of this array over here. Now here, the first thing that we are going to do, we will visit first cell, which is over here at the index of 0 with the value of a. Then we are continuing to the next cell, which is located at the index of 1. Then we are continuing to the next cell, which is located at the index of 2 with the value of c. Then we are continuing to the next cell, which is located at the index of 3 with the value of d. And it continues like this until we reach the last cell that we have in our array. Now, this is the logic behind the array traversal. So the main logic is we are visiting all cells of the array. Now let's implement this logic in Java. Now here, inside single dimension array Java file that we created in our previous lecture. So here we have created this class, then we have created constructor method, then we have created insertion method. Now here I'm going to create a new method which is called traverse array. So I'm going to declare our method like this. So it's going to be also public. So it's not returning anything. That's why I'll put void over here. So the name of function will be traverse array. And this function will not take any parameter because in this case, we are creating inside this single dimensional array class. That's why our array is already declared over here. We are going to use this array. So if you are declaring your method standalone, you can put as a parameter array over here. So in our case, it's not needed. That's why I don't put any parameter over here. Now inside this function, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a loop which loops through this array that we declared over here. So in this case, our for loop will start from 0 because the index of array starts from 0. So int I equals 0. Then we will continue our loop until we reach the length of array. So the length of array will not be considered because if the length of array, for example, is 7, the maximum index will be 7 minus 1, which is 6. So in this case, I is less than array.length. So this is the array that we have declared over here. It comes from the class. So here the I will be increased sequentially by 1. Then inside this loop, I'm going to print out all elements of the array to the console. So to print out them next to each other, I'm going to use print function, not println. So print function, print. So here is going to be created like this, arr with the value of I. So to access an element of array, we are putting the name of array, then we are putting the index of array, as we told you before. So here I will concatenate it with the space because I need space between them. Then with this, we are traversing our array. Now here in this case, as you see, we have not put any parameter over here. So here we might have an error if we put the array name incorrect. For example, if we haven't declared our array, but we put it there over here, it might give an error. So to prevent such cases, to show a clear message, we can put exception over here. Actually, it's up to you. If you don't want to make your method very complex, you don't need to put it. But in this case, I'm going to write try catch method for this method also because this is the safe way of doing this. So I'm going to do try. So here I will put like this. So I'll just copy this code from here and cut this code from here and paste it over here. Then inside catch, I'm going to put exception. So here I'm going to print out that array no longer exists. So with this message, we are aware of that we have not declared our array over here. Now, let's see how this method is working. So one more time in the main file, I'm going to call our method. So here I've just printed out array traversal to make different from this part because we need to insert some elements to our array to see the traversal properly. Then I called our traverse array method over here. Now let's run our code to see how this is working. Now basically this part comes from the previous lecture. So here we are inserted elements to this array over here, and we have tried to insert the elements to the occupied location and the index that we have not in our array. Now from here it starts array traversal. Now as you can see, we have 3 elements in our array. So in this case 0 we have inserted over here, and 10 we have inserted, and 20 we have inserted. So we are traversing all elements of array. But here you see that we have some minus values over here in this case. So you might be interested, what are these values and why our array printing out these values over here? So as you remember, when we are declaring our array, we have initialized our values to the minimum value of the integer. Now in Java, the minimum value in case of integer data type is this. So that's why it sets all elements to this value over here. So this means that our cells over here are empty, so we can insert any element to these cells over here, but here we have default value with the minimum value that comes from the integer. So as you see, when we are traversing through the array, all 10 elements of the array are printed out to the console. So this means that we are visiting each cell of this array and printing out to the console. So we know that traversal means that visiting all elements of array. So this is how it works in practice. Now you might be interested, what is the time complexity for this method that we created over here? So as always, we'll start from the first line of code. So I'm skipping the try block. So here we have loop. So in this loop, you see that we are looping through each element of the array. So if the number of elements in the array is n, so this means that it will repeat it n times. So this means that this part of code will take n time complexity. Now here we are printing out to the console the value of cells. So we know that accessing an element of the array is O1. So in this case, the time complexity for this part of code will be O1. Now it's applicable over here also, because here we are just printing out the message to the console, though this means that this will take also O1 time complexity. Now if you combine all these complexities over here, it is On time complexity. Now the space complexity for this method is O1, because here an extra memory is not required to perform this operation. We are just printing out the values to the console. So an extra memory is not required. So that's why it takes O1 space complexity. Now with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. So hopefully in this lecture you have understood how array traversal works in Java. Now see you in the next lecture.